Charlie Stella. Charlie, first of all, happy birthday to you.
Grazie.
How about spending your birthday here at the Pulse? What great planning on your part, huh?
It's a beautiful thing.
Well, it's great to have you with us. And his new book is called Tommy Red from Stark House. And it's not your first book. I know it's number 8, right?
8 or 9. I also wrote a nonfiction book, so it's 10 total, I think. Yeah,
10?
like
wow. Man, oh, man. But this one was, you didn't have one for like 4 years.
Because I decided to take an MFA program. I decided to get an MFA degree. I was just interested in literature. And wound up wasting 4 years of no crime writing. I wrote the first scene of this book in the MFA course at Star Island. And I have an issue with Star Island, as you could tell in the book. And then I wound up taking 4 years to finish it.
Well, it's a great book and really a page turner. Great page turner.
Thank you.
And some of my favorite locations are mentioned, are part of this book, really.
Which locations?
Like Staten Island and Brooklyn. My daughter lives in Brooklyn, so I've in fact, I've done baseball games from Staten Island. And honestly, that ballpark on Staten Island has the best view of any ballpark I have ever been in. Because you look across and you see the Manhattan skyline.
Yeah. That's the Yankee one, right? That's the one.
Yeah, Staten Island Yankees. Yeah, I used to do games in the New York Penn League for the Lowell Spinners, the Red Sox affiliate, and went to the stadium there many times, and a great view. Yeah, number one view in all of baseball, right there.
Well, we used to take that ferry, and my wife, back and forth to work. Well, she still takes it. When I was working in Manhattan, I don't know how many times, 10 times a week.
Yeah. And it's still free, right?
No.
It's not?
No, what they did is they combined the train and the ferry, so you pay one fare, but you could take the train, the Staten Island train.
Ah. Yeah, last time I was there, which was several years ago now, it was free.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't know that. So you get Staten Island in there, you have Brooklyn, Manhattan, Rye Harbor, New Hampshire, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. You've got a lot of locations that people can relate to. Maybe not in the way you have them in the book, but a different way of looking at these places.
The only reason I know Rye Harbor is because my last residency on Star Island, in the middle of it, my mother fell down back in Brooklyn.
Oh.
And my wife called me, and I kind of got into a panic mode. And so I had to take a local boat back to Rye, and I saw Rye. And all this stuff was working in my head about a guy in witness protection on Star Island. And I says, okay, Rye Harbor is where the guy escapes to. And that's, basically.
Yeah. So for those who have not read it, and there probably are a few in our audience that have not read Tommy Red. That's Tommy R-E-D Red. Tell us a little bit about it. You don't have to give too much away, but just tell us a little bit about the premise.
Well, basically, Tommy Red himself was born in a short story I wrote for Baltimore Noir. That's another one of the locations in the book. For Laura Lippman, she had edited the book, and I wrote this character, and the character stayed in my head because of his dialogue. And I wanted to use that particular dialogue in a book. So I had planned to write a book about Tommy Red. Went on and on. Like I said, I started writing it at the residency on Star Island, and then eventually put it aside. But basically, Tommy Red becomes a hitman. In the short story, he's not. He witnesses a hit, but he winds up becoming a hitman. He's kind of like a rogue hitman. He doesn't particularly work for the mob. His best friend kind of sets up stuff for the mob. I know a little bit about this stuff from past and from where I grew up in Canarsie. But basically, he winds up, he's given a job for a guy who's in the witness protection, is about to testify against a bunch of mobsters who the feds are hiding on Star Island, of all places. So and some dirty cop is involved in the FBI, and the story basically is about Tommy's issues with his life choices and his daughter, who he has 3 kids, but his oldest daughter is told by his wife that he's a hitman. And that becomes an issue for him throughout the book.
I can't understand why, but...
The guy's got to make a living.
That's true. Yeah, very true. So what fascination came first for you? Was it the mob or writing?
Actually, it was writing.
Yeah?
When I was a kid, I went to Catholic school. I was an altar boy, believe it or not. And I was forced, basically, to write an essay on religion. I forget what the hell it was about, but I wound up writing this thing, and I was one of 3 contestants. Nobody in the school believed I wrote the thing because I was one of the screw-ups in the class. I mean, it was a clown. I was a class clown. So that was my first taste of it. I went to high school. I played football. I had a good time doing that. But an English teacher turned me on to writing. All throughout my life, teachers, whether they were street rabbis, whether they were teachers or they were coaches, they basically saved me. I mean, that's the reality of it. And I wound up going to college. I met a teacher in an English course who read the opening lines from The Friends of Eddie Coyle. Jackie Brown, at 26, with no expression on his face, said he could get some guns. I was hooked from that point on. I wanted to write and I wanted to read.
Hooked by one line, huh?
One line in that book, actually.
Yeah. And you have been compared to George V. Higgins, who was the author of The Friends of Eddie Coyle. So how does that make you feel?
That's a high honor, but nobody is George V. Higgins. I mean, I'll be the first to admit it. That guy was the best. I just read his biography, actually, not too long ago, about 3 weeks ago. I did a review of it. His first 3 books were probably the 3 best crime novels I ever read in my life. He didn't like being pigeonholed as a crime writer. He said he wrote books with crimes in them. You could say that about Dostoevsky with Crime and Punishment, but he skirted off that track, and I think he had a little bit of an issue. I grew up with that. I grew up, my house was, we had basement swag. We were Macy's in the basement when I was a kid. Every week my mother's cousin would drop off a boatload of swag, and we sold it out of the basement. My father was a hardworking guy, but this is what life was in Brooklyn back in the 60s and 70s. And, my father got pinched once moving a truck full of booze. So my drink forever has been Chivas Regal because we had a basement full of Chivas Regal after he got pinched. And, you grow up with that stuff, and you make choices however you make them. I wound up having to support a bunch of households at once, and it was a lot easier than working 18 hours a day, So I wound up doing some street stuff.
Sounds a little bit like Goodfellas to me.
They were a little bit harder. Actually, Goodfellas, to tell you where I grew up, is 2 blocks from where I lived. If you remember Goodfellas, the scene where they burned the Bamboo Lounge, I lived 2 blocks from the Bamboo Lounge.
Yeah?
Yeah. John Gotti grew up in, not grew up, but he was living in Canarsie for a while.
Yeah.
A lot of people in Canarsie. Canarsie was pretty hardcore mob stuff. Yeah. You couldn't avoid it. Not everybody's father was a mobster or a knockaround guy, but everybody knew somebody. It was the way you made extra money,
Yeah.
It's the truth.
A knockaround guy. I've seen that. So how would you define a knockaround guy?
Knockaround guys, I knew the people I hung out with, people I knew, we were associates. We were like low-level associates. We made X amount of money. Some of us hustle a little more than others. Hustlers is what I call us. Some guys scalp tickets. I used to go to the Metropolitan Opera 2 or 3 times a week because I had a ticket scalper in my pocket. I lent the money. People that were selling swag, even if it was at kiosks, legitimate kiosks, it was all swag they were selling. People that were hustling football tickets during the football season. It was guys paying mortgages, or they were sending their kids to college. One of my friends